Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Glass Floor. This is part two of the interview with William Saramac from California, specifically from Riverside, California. Last episode, we were mainly talking about his time in jail, the court system out there, and the things going on that we could maybe change, and then the corruption basically in the whole legal system. This second part, we're hopefully focusing more on sort of his protests, about the different kinds of protesting, about how to bring awareness to things, about hopefully maybe finding ways to educate people to change these sort of political parts of the legal system. And within that being the more glass floor part of it, seeing how to educate that middle part that women are usually on about the men below them that they don't realize about the struggles that are going on, about people like William that are going through these things every day and they don't see it. So with that, the first thing I will tell you before handing off to William is William has chosen for the situation that he's currently on day 82
82, yeah.
of a hunger strike, and he
Oh,
goes
actually, 83 today, 83.
83. And he also tends to go, as he mentioned, outside of the courthouse with these different posters with the name of judges and um, about their um, basically I don't want to call them slip ups, they're complete inadequacies. Better
It's
word?
just straight up bigotry against men.
Yeah, they're bigotry, they're inadequacies, they're failures against
And it's
the.
also a good element of laziness too, because as I mentioned before, I don't believe any judge has ever opened anything I've ever submitted to the family court.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of laziness too.
Yeah. But he goes out there with the posters about their laziness and how their lack of helping. So with that, I will hand it to William to talk more about sort of the protesting he's been going through. Though to point out the laziness, I have noticed that a lot too when it comes to just it seems the whole paperwork thing. Because it seems like everybody wants to claim it's not theirs, and I say that just because I have a friend who's early in the process of the family court system. He's been in he gets to see his kid on an informal basis. By informal, I mean she decides when she feels like leaving the kid at random, and then he could possibly not see the kid for, like, 6 months. Um and so we've been helping with the paperwork, and I cannot tell you how many times we've had to redo paperwork because they're suddenly like, "Oh, we lost it. Oh, well, you sent it to this department, and realistically, it probably should go to this department because they don't want to look at it, which is a real pain. But I will hand it off to you.
I'll tell you how I started. I got to the point where I have been on a real horrible journey for last decade. And first abused by my wife and then abused by the courts. And then everything I've gone through, I my level of despair just kept rising and rising. It just kept getting worse. And I came to the realization that if this trend continues, I'm going to kill myself. I knew that's where it was going. And kind of in just a last ditch effort to try to avoid that outcome, which am certain is inevitable, I thought, well, at least try this. And if I make, some headway, maybe I'll have some hope and a reason to keep going. So while some people might take a hunger strike as you wanting to kill yourself, in my case, it was more a way to give one final excuse not to. And that's kind of how it started. I just woke up one day, realized the state I was in and where I was going. I walked to a store, picked up a poster board, walked over to the courthouse and I just started. There's no planning. I just walked over there and did it. And then the next day I woke up and did the same thing, kind of almost like a zombie, and then have just continued it to now because the hopelessness is so overwhelming that it's my last option to save myself and save my daughter, hopefully.
And when you've been out there with the poster and on the hunger strike, how have people come up to you? Are they reacting? Are they supportive? Are they
Um, it's I would say it's about 90 to 95% supportive when they do talk to you. Most people, nothing.
Yeah.
95% of people just walk past you and say nothing. But of the ones that do, it's definitely a majority. You can always tell when someone is not on your side
Mhm.
because they run up to you with all this confidence and energy and are ready to say something, having never talked to you before. And you're like, oh God. But I found a great way around that is I wear a camera phone around my neck. So as soon as they see that phone, it kind of like shuts them down before they lay into me.
Fair point. And have you found any reaction from the court itself or any of the workers in it since you've started this?
Yes, the workers who've come up to me have all been against me. Anyone who works for the court who has a lanyard on, I don't think a single one of them has ever come up to me favorably.
Okay.
Because everyone in the whole system is working for the same goal, and that's men are bad. Everyone in the system has that exact same point of view. They all go to the same college. The colleges all indoctrinate them to hate men, and that's their religion, and they're all working towards that goal.
And um I know recently you started picking up more speed. You had an interview with Polly. You had two interviews with Polly Lum, and you've been getting some social media presence. And have you seen any reaction from that? Any kind of movement where that's been
Well,
going?
I've had a couple people call me. I've done a lot of exchanges on X and a lot of emails. Um, Most people are very positive. Occasionally, I get some people who think I'm not doing the right thing, um, and some negative, but it's mostly been positive. I've heard a lot of people's stories,
Mhm.
um, and while my story is worse than most, all those other stories are horrible too. Men are broken. That's the biggest message I can make is they have broken men. Men are giving up at this point. Men don't want to get married anymore. Men don't want to even date anymore. They're just everyone's giving up. This war that they're waging on men is not only taking out men, it's taking out women, it's taking out children. Women are no better off for this war on men. They're no better off. It's not helping anyone. It's certainly not helping the men.
No, yeah, of course not. And as we mentioned earlier, I was telling you how Tim and I had previously spoken in an episode where he and I end up talking about how, in a way, this whole idea of them saying the patriarchy is doing all this in their fight against the patriarchy, they've sort of torn down the family system because people have noticed how profitable it is to support this rise against the patriarchy. Um, that they're
There's too
calling
it's
the
too bad there's not a better word for the patriarchy because that really doesn't work.
yeah.
It's really just a select group of men. It would be more accurate to say the liberal elites have been in charge because we've been
Mhm.
in a liberal world order since World War II. Everything since World War II, everything we have right now is based on the post World War II perspective.
Yeah. It is. I mean, even some people might point out the Republican, like, presidents we've had, but even those presidents have been a lot more liberal than what we've had pre-World War II. So, it is very much these elites in this new world order that have been the people they're mainly addressing. And sort of in turn, and I mentioned this to you in the meeting, which is that, we have, episode that should come out soon with Clark, and Clark had spoken about the canary in the coal mine with the African American community's family situation reflecting what will be the family situation for the other, ethnic groups in the future. Mm.
Yeah, my thoughts on this is we've kind of run an experiment on Black people
Mhm.
on what happens when you take fathers out of the home. In
Yeah,
the 1960s, there was a 20% fatherless rate, and now in the Black community, there's like an 80% fatherlessness rate. And crime has gone up, violence has gone up, education has gone down. The entire Black culture has been destroyed. 55% of Hispanics are now uh, not married and living with their children.
yeah.
30% of white people. In total, 40% of people are not growing up in an intact family anymore. I think when society hits that 50% threshold, there's gonna be some kind of civilizational collapse. I don't know how our civilization can continue like this. We're not reproducing. No one's happy. Everyone's depressed. Everyone's sick. It's a everyone's mentally ill. We're instilling mental illness on our children because if they don't have fathers in the home, if they don't have an intact family, they're like 15 times more likely to be mentally ill, 15 times more likely to be in jail. All our social ills are coming from this, all of them.
No, yeah, absolutely, and, to I would say so I got 2 points. A, just to add to the Hispanic point, um, being half Hispanic, I've noticed a lot of it isn't so much I don't wanna say fathers not being in the home, but it seems like a lot less people are just getting married in the Latino community, and they're having kids out of marriage.
And
Um,
that's not traditional for most Hispanics, because
no,
most
not
Hispanics,
usually.
yeah,
Sorry, you were saying?
no,
Or
I
you were
just said
cutting
that's not traditionally the way it's been.
No, not in the past, not at all. Definitely not, especially not in the older generations. I know in my grandparents' generation, everybody had to get married if you had a kid. That was just the end of the story. And honestly, it's
Right?
still a lot that way in my mother's generation. So it's a bit
The
of a new
boomers were
thing.
the first generation to really get married, but they're also the first generation to start with a divorce.
Yeah, that is very true. That I was gonna bring that up to that point. Another thing too with as you mentioned, the black people and it being this experiment where it's taken out of the home, there sort of seemed to be this wave in like the maybe later 50s, early 60s, it seems, where high divorce rates were starting to happen. Because there was just these men who just weren't ready to be fathers, they'd leave to another state. And you had these angry women who would be these mothers who couldn't get child support from the guy who was states away. And a lot of them seem to join this 60s feminist movement. I could be wrong, but that's just a trend I sort of noticed. And it's from that movement that seemed that anger sort of embodied into the rhetoric that we see today, where it seems to be against this family dynamic, against and this is another conversation Tim and I've had, gender roles and in many ways tradition and culture too. Um, that's actually a
I,
separate
I think I think this goes with the liberal kind of world order. Is if you can eliminate the family, you
Mhm.
can indoctrinate everyone in the schools. If you can just get rid of the fathers are the ones who go into the schools and say, no, we're not allowing any of this shit here. They're the ones who stand up. The mothers don't do that as much as a dad would. So if you can get fathers out of the picture, now you can train all the kids in your philosophy. And since most liberals think everyone, all human beings are a blank slate, which is not at all true, they think that human beings can just be programmed like they're just animals, and that's just not the case. Humans aren't like that.
Yeah, no, humans tend to learn and they make their own opinions and they adapt and other things, but you're definitely not wrong about that. Fathers being more the ones who'll sort of say, "We're not doing this." Um, and it seems there's a program I don't know if I'd say it's a program, but sort of like a movement that started here, which is um I remember seeing it in the news, and it's this guy who will host these days where men of the community will come and they'll sort of serve as fathers for a day. And they'll go to a school and take all the young boys, and the young men will teach them like how to tie a tie, read books to them, give them life advice, that kind of stuff. Just bringing that figure in there. And that seems to have sort of helped a lot, that program. Some of the kids who have been in that. Um, Seem to be doing a lot better. They have more sense of what they want to do. Because that seems to be another thing too that's raising on top of the lack of family is a lack of guys who seem to know really what they should do. They seem to be really
Well,
hopeless
these
or
guys are doing everything wrong.
mhm.
That's why they don't know what to do, because everything they would normally do is now wrong.
Yeah. Um, or they're told it's odd or not socially acceptable or something else. So with that, I guess I'd wonder sort of where the approach would be to if there is any way of an approach, sorry, Tim's book, um, to maybe reverse or at least find some form of common ground to rebuild on.
No, I think we're waiting for everything to just collapse at this point. I think it just has to get so bad that nothing works anymore, and we're getting close. Things work less and less now. Um, what they've done, I don't have any hope. Obviously, I'm on a hunger strike, but I may pass away from this. So I don't have much hope to offer. I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to get better. I think it's going to get worse until it breaks, and only after it breaks can it get better. I think we're in a war for civilization, and I think you don't win a war without casualties. You're either going to get one of two things. You're going to get people like me who don't want to be violent, but want to enforce change, and the only thing we can do is give our lives, or you're going to get people who want to take other people's lives. And it won't be long before you're going to see violence against these judges. And people are either going to die on hunger strikes or going to die in the violence. That's what's going to happen. It's going to come down to that, unfortunately, because you just can't get the elite to listen. I've tried to talk to these judges. I've sent them sincere letters telling them, what's going on, and we can't do this to our civilization. We can't do this to children.
Mhm.
They don't care. They're all indoctrinated and they're all going along with their plan.
To that point, something you brought up earlier was how the judicial system is sort of political. At least here in Illinois, we tend to vote for our judges every election. They show up on a ballot.
Right. We
How,
vote for them here too, but it's a nonpartisan ballot. So you don't know who's the Democrat, who's the Republican. You really don't know any of their positions. And judges just never, once they're in, they never get voted out ever. I mean, like, what? There's no more secure position than being a judge because no
yeah.
one pays attention to the races. No one knows who their judges are. No one. Most people don't even know who their local assembly person is, um, let alone a judge. They just don't know. They just don't know.
So to that point, I was wondering if there was, in your mind, maybe a way to educate people more about who their judge is? Would it take like an editorial? Would it take, I know you go out with the sign. Would it take maybe something like that, like having signs of each judge when election time comes around that has stuff or like opinions? Would it take like a review that comes out? Something like a quarterly report? What do you think would get people to start paying more attention to their judicial decisions?
If they
Every
can't do it for the children, I don't think there's anything that they'll do it for. Because forget the men for a moment. Just toss all that out the window. Men don't matter. If they would just care about the children, we could have some victories. But they don't care about the children. They just don't. It's not a factor. It's women before children in family court. They're not looking for one moment how it's harming the children. So I'd be happy to win the fight that way. I'd be happy to forget about everything they did to me if we could somehow stop children from being harmed so desperately in this country. But I don't really think anything short of people. I don't think till you have casualties, you can win a war. I think there's nothing we can do until there's casualties.
Okay. Um, with that, I guess, I was sort of curious, not that I'm trying to push it or anything, but what kind of change do you think you would need to see to end your hunger strike and start having, like conversations with these judges and other things?
Well, well, what I've asked for in this whole, I've asked for three things. I've asked simply to be heard, and being heard is too much for them. I've asked to appear before the Civil Rights Committee and
Mhm.
just be heard. I've asked to sit down with Child Protective Services and just be heard. Um, I've asked for, I've asked so many people to just sit down and talk to me, and they just won't even do it. The problem is they don't even see men as human.
Yeah.
If you're not even on a level of being a human being, you don't have to talk to them. Um, I've asked the presiding judge to meet with me. Just talk to me. If those three groups would just sit down with me and talk, I would end it because at least I'd have some forward momentum. But when they're so arrogant, they don't even deign to talk to you or respond to you in any way. I don't know what to do.
So if the judicial committee, if the judge, if the court, if CPS, if any of these entities
If
was
any of the managers at CPS, if any of the judges in the courts would sit down and actually discuss this issue. Bring in 20 people who went to court, 20 men who went to court that day, and just have us one after another tell them what's going on and how bad it is for not only us but our kids. They don't want to hear how much they're hurting the kids. So because they know that if men come before them and they actually have to talk to men, it's going to come out they're hurting not just men, but they're hurting our children. They don't even want to have the conversation. My death will be just about the fact that I'd rather have that man die before speaking with him.
to that point, I guess I would ask, I realize you brought up that you're not much in the hope point, but we were talking about, you know, glass floor women being in that middle part, and how men are super damaged. How do you get women to realize the damage they're causing? How do you get them at the table? How do you get people to talk? How
You can't because these women who think that way don't have fathers and it's self perpetuating. Once you got one father out of the black community or one father out of the white community or wherever, one father out of the picture, that next generation is not going to have a father either. And again, it'll just keep growing. Once they've initiated the process, it just goes till collapse, I think.
And would you say that, that I mean, obviously, the court system itself, we're saying, has many political aspects, is political in its own way. Would you say this has sort of been done intentionally, on
Oh
purpose,
yeah,
to have it go this way downhill?
politics being purposely forced into the family court system. It's there on purpose. There's absolutely there on purpose.
Uh,
In fact, if you go against it, it wouldn't be tolerated. If one of those 32 judges had actually sent a letter back to me, that judge would no longer be on the committee. So not one of them sent it back or responded.
mm,
They're either there because that's what they believe, or because when you get like a conservative who might have a different thought, they make sure that whatever Republicans they appoint are feckless. So you get true believer liberals in the court system, and then you get feckless Republicans who never stand up for anything.
mm. So, and this is probably gonna be closer to my last question. I guess I would wonder to that, if we made a new political party that was specifically based on addressing these issues, the men's issues, because it's been brought up, should we start a men's
No,
party?
I don't think if third parties won't work in America. They won't work. They never have. And what you have going on right now is all those old line conservatives who were feckless. That's what I grew up on.
Mm,
Conservatives saying they're going to do this, they're going to do this, doing this, but when they get into office, they never ever did it. As soon as we got someone who would actually do what they say they're going to do,
we're not gonna go.
yeah, Trump is the first person to ever actually do what he's in my entire life is the first conservative, and Trump's really not a conservative; he's more of a moderate. But the first politician who ever actually came into office, and whether you agree with him or not, at least he's not feckless, and at least he does what he says. Because I like Trump. I don't agree with everything he does, but the fact that he'll actually do something on some issues is enough because we've been fed no action our entire lives.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like getting too political. I don't really try to put opinions or whatnot, but inaction has definitely been sort of the downfall in politics. This is a conversation you weren't around for, but at one point, John and I had a conversation where I was asking him questions because he had brought up, um, and you heard it earlier, he was talking about amendments and how that system works. And I had brought up that one time during a different organization I was in, we ended up meeting with some of the legislators of the state that were working on this specific bill about mental health issues. And what was interesting is I read it and there was no action plan written within the legislation itself. Just, you should do this, or you have to do this. But no, how do you have to do this? And because of that, it had not been implemented whatsoever. And I was being explained, and the legislators in there sort of explained to me that that sometimes happens. They just try to get it out, so they don't put the full details in it because they'll just be like, oh, we can amend it later. It's just about getting the concept passed out. The amendments, easier to pass through. And that, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a professional legal counsel. I would like to put that on record. But I feel like that is in part why possibly things are going maybe the way they are because they don't work out these action plans and these details. And that has led to a complete inaction where we vote all these people in, and realistically, they're so saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. In reality, they're putting these half-written legislation out, it would seem, instead of actually doing what they said they were going to do. I don't know if you agree or if you have an opinion on that, but
I think the biggest problem with our legislation is the legislation's all written by lobbyists. Um, I don't I don't know the legislatures actually write any of their own legislation anymore. Um, I think it's lobbying groups write the entire bill, uh, and then they give them donations to keep them in office, and the bill passes.
possibly. I mean, we are sort of in that day and age where people do that, and a lot of the legislators have gotten aged, quite a bit older, so you probably can't do most of that work. But with that, uh, sort of for final notes, is there any kind of last message, any kind of um, is there something you want the people to know? Um, First of all, if you want to put your social media handles out there so people can follow you, people can hear your stories. But if there's any message that they should know, any kind of action you think they should take, they'll pinpoint a move towards correcting this or towards at least
Well,
helping you out.
if someone wants to offer me support, the best thing they can do is just follow me on Twitter. I'm losing all hope. I don't have any. I'm pretty much out of hope at this point that I'm going to be able to affect any change. Um, I think I think I'm done. People can offer me support, and I appreciate it, but I think we're getting to the point now that I, I don't know what to say because I've been doing this for 83, 82, 83 days, and I thought I'd get a better response than I did because I've talked to a lot of people, um, but I think in the men's rights community itself, there's the men are so beaten up they can barely take care of themselves, let alone go out there and help another man because they're just broken themselves. So you got broken people. I don't think are going to be able to help broken people. I think that's just where we're at.
Mm.
Um, my hope was the local paper would pick it up and then maybe something might go viral on YouTube, but how much longer can I last at this? I'm feeling really sick right now. A week or two, I don't know. I feel so bad at this point. Um, I just don't know there's enough time left now.
Well, I know you said you're not the most hopeful, but my hope is that we could get the paper pick this up and then we can get this going viral and people will be able to see this and they'll be able to get an awareness and hopefully start striving towards, moving the arrow, if you will. But William, thank you so much for being on this episode. Thank you for talking with me. Thank you for being my first one-on-one interview.
Thanks for having me.
And hope the best, and I hope you feel better soon. And with that, this has been the Glass Floor Podcast. We are a podcast that talks about, gender equalism and different men's issues and things of that. And we try to sort of figure out, as Tim always says, loving men, respecting women, finding that equilibrium. But we are sponsored by NCFM, the National Coalition for Men, which was sponsored in 1977. It is a nonpartisan, diverse, inclusive group that fights against discrimination against boys, men, and the families that love them. And so, with that, we end our episode. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Please comment and pass this on and help William out. Bye.